Hello and welcome to WMT Review's 12 Nights of Halloween. I am Wiseman Tanofsky. There were many films to take the words inspired by a true story to their name. But what does that actually mean? You see those words attached to a film and somehow it adds a new dimension to what you just witnessed. Just the subliminal thought that what you watched could possibly have occurred in the world you live in. And when it's connected to a horror movie, it makes it even more unnerving. You can't help but think, my god, this actually happened? And it throws your entire concept of fiction and non-fiction into question. Of course, the truth of the matter is, films inspired by a true story are really nothing to worry about. Sometimes it's just the location they use, sometimes they take one action from history and interpret it as another, or just nitpick the best bits from a serial killer's resume and add an element of fantasy to up the fear factor. Truth is, it's the films based on a true story that you need to worry about, as these ones are intended to be accurate retellings of true stories from history, and it makes films based on hauntings, exorcisms, possessions, and serial murders far more based in reality. But somehow, Hollywood can never resist the temptation to sensationalize the facts in an effort to cheat more scares out of the audience, and unfortunately for them, it's a cheat that critics are well practiced in picking up on. On the subject of films inspired by a true story, the film we're having a look at today was, like Silence of the Lambs and Hitchcock's classic Psycho, inspired by the life and crimes of American serial killer and grave robber Ed Gein. Living in Wisconsin in the 50s, Gein's home was raided by police where they discovered a grisly scene the likes of which would never be repeated in the history of the world. Human body parts being used as furniture, human faces being used as masks, human skin used as bodysuits, and the strung-up body of recently murdered Bernice Worden hung up in a shed like an animal. This hideous scene was the inspiration for the Sawyer residence in Tobe Hooper's notorious 1974 horror film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, widely regarded as one of the most controversial and disturbing films of all time. Banned in several countries and withdrawn from countless theatres for its graphic and disturbing content, the film would later become a cult phenomenon, gaining popularity as one of the greatest horror films ever made. Does it live up to this reputation? Let's find out. This is the WMT review of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So what's the story this time? Well, a group of teenagers travel to a cemetery to investigate rumours of grave robbing and to see if one of their past relatives' graves has been targeted. While on the road, they encounter a hitchhiker played by Edwin Neal, who, after discussing his family and their work at the old slaughterhouse, attacks one of them with a straight razor, leaving Sally, played by Marilyn, to cast him out of the van while tending to her disabled brother Franklin, played by Partain. Stopping off at their family's homestead, some of Sally's friends go off to find a swimming hole, but instead stumble upon the home of Jedediah Sawyer, better known as the serial killer Leatherface, who kills them both. When Sally and Franklin go looking for them, Franklin is quickly impaled on a chainsaw by the psychopath, while Sally flees to the gas station where she discovers that the Sawyer family are all over the area and have been luring travellers to their deaths before eating their bodies ever since the slaughterhouse went out of business. And that everyone they've so far encountered is a part of this deranged and inbred family. While said family prepare to murder and eat her, Sally is able to escape from the house and manages to flee on the back of a pickup truck, while Leatherface swings his chainsaw around in frustration as the sun sets. The key selling point of this movie is not the death scenes, as many later slasher films would become, but rather in the disturbing nature of the Sawyer residence. This is where the Ed Gein inspiration comes to full realization. Furniture made from human bone, the general utilization of body parts in everyday appliances. It all serves to create an atmosphere of the macabre, and would no doubt have disturbed cinema audiences in the 70s. The problem I have with it is that being a 90s kid myself, and having seen the second phase of the slasher genre, I don't find a lot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's images particularly disturbing. I can appreciate the visuals of a house littered with human bones as much as any guy, but I watch films like this to see the killer doing his thing, and while the long build-up does serve to up the suspense, I don't really feel like there was much payoff here. Like I say, I can see how an audience who's never seen anything like this before would be shocked and appalled by what they're seeing, but from a modern viewpoint, I don't find it very scary. So let's talk about Leatherface, played by Gunnar Hansen. This was the original visualization of the Leatherface character, and it was infinitely more successful than later interpretations. They portray the elements of his personality very well, contextualized with the use of his three masks: killing, old lady, and pretty woman, portraying what character he wanted to be at the time. It shows the idea that there's no personality and no person under the mask, only what each mask is depicting, whether it be a homely cook or a bloody murderer. Beyond the mask, there's nothing there. It only serves to make him more disturbing and unnerving as a character. This, of course, creates the unfeeling shell of a human being that many future slashers would attempt to emulate, and the fact that it's done in the form of this deranged psychopath only makes this character scarier. When this guy is coming after you, you don't have time to fall down or rest like in so many modern horrors, or you'll be chainsaw chow in no time. He doesn't waste time with one-liners, he doesn't enjoy what he does, he just does it because that's how his family survives. He doesn't play with his victims, he just takes them down. And I have to respect that in a serial killer. The rest of the family are just as creepy as you'd expect. The hitchhiker especially delivers a fantastically frantic performance, jittery and edgy in his delivery, and slick in his physical performance. He acts like a drug addict, hours away from desperately needing his next fix. Drayton Sawyer is also played very well. Known as the cook, he's the one who prepares the human flesh meals from the family, but he also portrays a moralistic struggle in that he knows what they do is the only way they can survive, but he just can't take no joy in killing. It adds a third dimension to the character and makes him appear as more than just another psycho in the family. The makeup on Mama and Grandpa was well done. Grandpa really does look like a century-year-old man, and you wonder if he's even alive in that chair or just another corpse. Truly a well-executed visualization of the Sawyer family. So, what about the rest of the cast, the red shirts of the film? Well, they're exactly what you'd expect from a slasher film. Not a particularly standout cast as far as the supporting characters go, and a lot of the time you wish the film would just hurry up and kill them already. Partain's wheelchair-bound character is a bit of a pain in the neck. He constantly whines and complains, and it does get on my nerves after a while. It doesn't make him all that sympathetic, just annoying. Marilyn Burns, on the other hand, was very enjoyable to watch. She did a very good job of being the protective sister in the first two acts of the film, and for the third act, my God, did she scream. I mean, seriously, her throat must have been killing her after all the screaming she did. You really do root for her to get away as well, a factor not shared by later slasher protagonists, and when she does... Well, let's just say, one of the most unnerving parts of this film for me is that frantic and breathless laugh she does on the back of that truck. Wide-eyed, frantic. She's got away, but I think she might have lost her mind in the process. A truly fantastic performance for a film of this genre. For a film called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there was a misleading amount of gore and on-screen deaths in this one. That's not a massacre, that's barely a serial killing. Like I said before, the fear factor of this film comes from the disturbing and macabre imagery of the Sawyer household, and the unnerving performance of the clearly deranged family. That being said, practical effects are well utilised in this picture. You really believe that girl is hanging from that meat hook. And physical performances are well executed too. When Leatherface clouts that guy with the sledgehammer, I almost jump with how believable the acting is. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a very different kind of horror film. You feel like you're stumbling upon this family just on an average day, taking an average haul in victims. It doesn't overcompensate for a poor story with tons of gore, jump scares, and fake-outs like other slashers. And it's not afraid to make audiences gag in place of scream, pumping up the fear and the tension with an atmosphere of the bizarre. Fans of lots of bloody violence may find the pace a little slow, but they're just failing to become invested in the tension. If you know what this film is building up to, you both cannot wait and you don't want to see it unfold. The script is strong and well balanced. The attention to detail in every frame of film is exemplary, and it wouldn't be rivaled in film for many years to come. And just the risks that this film took make it a fantastic bit of filmmaking. That's what you call sticking it to the censor. Personally, I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre does deserve its title as one of the most controversial horror movies of all time. It took things to a new level and challenged horror directors everywhere to outdo it. which they've been trying to do ever since. Every horror movie ever made really just sets out to cause the same wave of disbelief and earn the same badge of infamy as Tobe Hooper earned himself with his first ever theatrical release. And from me, it earns itself a respectable 8 on the Orsometer. While I may have built up an immunity to the disturbing imagery of this movie through years of overly graphic slasher flicks, I can still appreciate the sheer legacy of this impressive cornerstone in the history of horror filmmaking. So that's an 8 on the Orsometer for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've been Wiseman Tanofsky. This has been WMT Reviews 12 Nights of Halloween. Thank you very much for listening.